Life transitions is a key focus of the work that I do at georginalangdale.com, and also it's a focus for products I make in the Archetypes Apothecary. And over the last over the course of the last decade, really, one of the key life transitions that I've been focusing on is one that women will go through, and it is menopause. It's the perimenopause transition to menopause, and then life beyond menopause. And it's a huge point in a woman's life. And you know what? I just love supporting women through this time, through this transition. And I think I'm very much in the Menopause Rocks Club, in spite of some of the kind of yuck symptoms and such things that we go through as we're going through menopause. But to be honest, I think that crossing over this midlife threshold as a woman gives us the power for real empowerment. Last year, 2023, I created an online program called Soul Medicine for the Midlife Woman. And I put together a program of different things that I thought, and I've used and worked with clients to help really take and embrace the power of the menopause transition. I am actually adding to that program at the moment because I did some training last year with the Integrated Women's Health Institute in menopause coaching, really looking at the workings of the endocrine system and how we can help women through menopause by understanding that better. So I'm actually in the process of folding in some of those things that I've learned from that into my soul medicine course to add a kind of a physiological, dietary, supplementary sort of aspect to the wider program. But I thought, as we get into the new year, into 2024, that it might be helpful to give you a little peek at one of the lectures, one of the talks I do within the Soul Medicine course. I will be re-releasing Soul Medicine for the Midlife Woman, but in this augmented, enhanced, expanded version of what it was in 2023. Plus, I'll be doing some regular live Zoom calls with people who sign up for the course. I'm going to use this week's episode of The Soul Garden just to share with you a talk I gave in Soul Medicine for the Midlife Woman last year on goddess archetypes and ways that we can work with them for our own self-determination. So I'm going to put that recording in here for you now, and I'll come back as me in 2024 and say goodbye to you at the end of this talk. The talk goes for 29 minutes, so I will see you on the other side. Today, in this talk, I am talking about the goddess within. Oh, goddesses, wouldn't we all love to be one? The fact is that we are, at any one time, we can be and contain within ourselves the archetypes of a number of goddesses. And so thinking of oneself as a goddess is not sort of, big-headed or anything. It can actually be a fantastic tool for managing oneself. Before I go any further, I am going to show up a book. This is Goddesses in Everywoman, A New Psychology of Women. So I hope that you can see that. And it is by Jean Shinola Boden, MD, and has a foreword by Gloria Steinman. And it was published in, see, you can tell I've gone through midlife because I have to hold the book further away now to read it. So where are we? It was published in 1984. I found this in a secondhand bookshop, but you could probably get it on your online shop of choice. The thing is about it, this is a great book. And so if you can find a copy of it, I really recommend that you get it. Why? Because Shinola Boden is a psychiatrist, and she did a whole heap of work around working with archetypes for women and for our development and our progression and the way we show up in the world. I went into this book with a sort of open mind, but I got to the end of it and I just thought, wow, she's fabulous. This is like a really beautiful elder. In fact, if I talked about Shinola Boden as a goddess archetype in writing this book, I would say that the predominant archetype was of Hestia, the Greek goddess Hestia, who's the goddess of the hearth and is a wise woman. Now, why would we work with goddess archetypes? Because they can help us figure stuff out. They can shine a light on the different and nuanced aspects of our character and our hopes and our fears and our passions, and can become a really effective tool for navigating ourselves through life. So I'm going to now just quickly introduce 6 Greek goddesses from Greek mythology. But I'm looking at them through the lens of being a midlife woman. As we know, this transition, we have an opportunity to change, to grow, to develop, to let things go and bring things in. And these amazing ladies, these goddesses, can just help us do that. Right, so where to begin? The first goddess I'm going to mention is Artemis, the Greek goddess Artemis, also known as the Roman goddess Diana. So Artemis is known as the hunter. She's the one that has her hounds with her, and she's kind of this pretty ruthless hunter. She's also known as a moon goddess, or a goddess of the woods in a way, because she was very comfortable at night in the forest. She owned the space. And then there's this whole legend that some guy came along, and she also seemed to be a kind of protector of virgins. She's not very keen on men. And one day she and her virgin priestesses had stopped at a pool, stripped off, got in for a swim and to sort of bathe, and some bloke came along and spied on them. He didn't have the sense to run away when he sees a goddess bathing, and Artemis saw him and turned him into a stag, and his own hunting dogs that he was with tore him to pieces. Pretty vindictive, really. But the hunter is an archetype for a woman. The Artemis archetype is all about sovereignty, about an identity that's not built on the relationship that you're in, the man you might love, the woman that you might love. It's kind of self-contained and powerful. And there's, the hunter goes after its prey. She's pretty amazing. So when we're in midlife, as we're going through this transition and we're trying to think about how am I going to really make the most and of everything this stage of life gives me and moving onwards, getting a little bit of Artemis within might help give the drive and the single-mindedness in a way to go after the things that really matter to you. For yourself, self-governance. On the other side of that coin is Hera. Hera is the goddess of matrimony. She's the complete opposite of Artemis. Hera places the husband at the center of her life. Marriage, husband, that is all that matters. It could also apply to the career woman whose career is all that matters. Nothing else matters. So this is a really interesting archetype for women in midlife, especially if we've spent our younger years absolutely playing second fiddle to our partner. It may be that their career has been able to progress at the detriment of your own. There can be that feeling often that one's own identity gets subsumed by the partner, husband, whatever, or the company one works for. You become so enmeshed with the company, you lose your own sense of self. So in midlife, a lot of this can kind of come under the spotlight of one's own scrutiny. Is the marriage, is the husband still working for me? Am I secure in the marriage? Often women with the Hera archetype can be very possessive and jealous. And then what happens if that relationship ends? What happens if there's a parting of the ways or your partner dies? What happens to Hera then? So the challenge often for women with a strong Hera archetype is to be able to navigate those sorts of changes without falling into a big depression. If one is a woman that Hera archetype is really central to them, they've spent all their years focusing on doing everything for the partner or husband or whatever, what happens in that situation changes. At that time, the Hera archetype would do really well to call on the other goddesses to give her a hand to lift her out of the collapse of her world. And we'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. Demeter is the Greek goddess of grain. She's the mother. She's a classic maternal archetype. She is all about nourishing others. That's why she's this goddess of grain and crops and, all these things that feed us. She is the goddess that provides and nourishes and mothers the family, children, husband, friends, whoever, local community. She'll be the one with the pie, cake stand at the local fete or whatever. Often in someone with a strong Demeter archetype is probably drawn to working in the caring professions. A number of things can happen for the Demeter archetype as we head into perimenopause and then through the menopause transition. And the big one for the Demeter archetype is often around biological clock ticking. There can be often a desire for children where maybe you haven't had children before, or another just, wanting another child, this wanting to birth something and care for it. The biological clock ticking can be a thing. It may be that she also may call on other archetypes to help her through this. For example, maybe she would call on Aphrodite to help her channel that desire for nurturing and creation into some sort of, new art form or something that does something nourishing for others in a different sort of way. The empty nest can also be a really huge change for the Demeter archetype woman. If one's soul is fed by the feeding of others and the caring of others, when those kids leave the nest, that is just huge. So what the wonderful Jean Shinola Boden says in her book is the Demeter archetype after the emptiness and in midlife can grow by learning to be her own good mother. She can grow by learning to be her own good mother. Often, I think women possibly are all guilty of this at times, the Demeter archetype just can't say no. She wants to help. Oh, yes, I'm going to help here and I'm going to help here and come and let me do this. And wonderful, beautiful, generous heart. But it can lead to her own self getting overburdened, burnt out, fatigued, all of that sort of thing. So that a key to managing one's own Demeter archetype in oneself is to be your own good mother. Isn't that lovely? Right. Another goddess is Persephone. Persephone is, she's the maiden. She's all about youthfulness and, fresh-faced and joyful, and there's a certain naivety about her. And as she ages, as that archetype ages, there can be issues around accepting that one doesn't possibly look quite so youthful anymore. In terms of us as midlife women, the Persephone archetype may make us struggle with the actual physical reality of aging. And so again, if we can identify that, then we're able to call on these other archetypes to help us through it. This is what I love about this is it's all about women helping women, and they're all inside you. You truly are a goddess. So I've got two more to go. One is, so we've got Persephone, who's kind of youthfulness and the maiden, and then we've got Aphrodite. The Greeks called her Aphrodite, and the Romans, she was called Venus. And she is all about beauty, sensuality, sexuality, seduction, love, passion, all of womanliness, just va-va, boom. People like the goddess Hera, who's placing everything around her husband, just can't cope with the Aphrodite archetype coming into the orbit with her husband, because she's like, oh, this is going to be trouble here, which there might not be. But Aphrodite kind of has a huge presence, and we all know an Aphrodite somewhere, don't we? But we all have her within ourselves too. And so for me, the things that I've been thinking about in midlife with regards to Aphrodite or Venus is not losing sight of living in the sensual world. For me, I interpret Venus, Aphrodite, beauty, sensuality, etc., beyond just sex, but right through into the foods I eat, the art I make or look at, the music I listen to, the song I sing, the fabrics I wear, the colors I surround myself with, the tactile sensation of my dog or a beautiful ceramic pot. For me, all of those things really play strongly to my sense of my Aphrodite archetype. And, for the first part of a woman's life, well, I'm going to speak from the I here. For the first half of my life or more, pre-perimenopause, as a young woman, the Aphrodite archetype brought with it a sense of never really living up to it. Oh my God, I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not attractive. I'm not seductive enough. I'm not sensual enough. Am I good enough in the sack? All of that sort of stuff. In midlife, though, I'm finding that I'm exploring Aphrodite and Venus's relationship, sensual relationship with the world beyond the bedroom. And that is just wonderful. I also think that going through menopause, your hormones are changing. Well, I'm going to speak from the I again. And it can be that actually all of that youthful Persephone maiden time of our lives when we were kind of, the world is full of opportunity, and Venus, Aphrodite is going to make a lot of that opportunity about relationships and love affairs and romance and all, there's more room in my head because I'm not thinking about that stuff so much anymore, but I am thinking about my vibrant, vivacious, vital, energizing, inspiring way of living with the sensual world. What inspires me? What do I want to create? What creativity does it fill me up? So Aphrodite, Venus archetype, can, I think, move from this kind of womanly body thing to a relationship with the world, and a bit of both. In a funny sort of way, I call on the Aphrodite archetype in postmenopause. I'm working with her to help me feel good about my body in a way that I never used to. And that goodness gets enriched and enhanced by its connection and interplay with the sensual world around me. And then finally, there's the goddess Hestia, Greek goddess Hestia. She was known by the Romans as Vesta. You may have heard of the Vestal virgins. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth. She's known as the wise woman, and she's known not so much for her deeds, but for her rituals. Good old ceremony again. Her symbol is the circle. And in the ancient cities like the Renaissance remodeling of Florence was based on this idea of the central part being a fire that was burning, that was for Hestia or for Vesta. And this symbolized the importance of this goddess keeping the home fires burning, keeping the hearth safe, protecting the city. So her significance was really in rituals. And yes, we would then see that these fires, Hestia or Vesta's fires, were tended to by these virgins. The word hearth means focus, comes from the word focus, focusing inward into the center. So Hestia is like this wise woman goddess. She looks inwards. She has a deep and rich spiritual life. This archetype is the wise woman elder. She looks inward. She's honored. She's about spiritual illumination, the fire of wisdom, the burning away of what is not needed. A really wonderful archetype. So when we work with archetypes, well, I'll give you another example. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is an author and psychotherapist. He said to me one day, he said something along the lines of, you are strongly Artemis, you have a strong Artemis archetype, but you're also actually led by Venus, but she can want a lot, but maybe you should give her a bit more than you're giving. And I was like, wow, what is that? And then I thought, oh, that's really cool. So all my life I've done art and things, a bit here and there. But I thought, I could bring Venus out to play a lot more with those things that I love to make and create. And how might I dress differently as a woman in midlife that is really honoring my Aphrodite? And how can Aphrodite and Artemis team up in me to give me the drive to get things done, to achieve what I want to do? So I sort of see at the moment a trinity of goddesses. Hestia, because of that spiritual illumination and wise woman elder, joining hands with Aphrodite, giving me that sensual connection with the world. And then Artemis, keeping me focused and on track with the things I want to do. I'm just telling you my story to help illuminate ways we can work with archetypes. So, for example, let's say you have a strong Hera archetype, the goddess of matrimony, and then you're divorced. And you've got to kind of start from scratch. In a situation like that, you might say, right, I want to pull in more Venus, more Aphrodite to help me love myself again, and Artemis to help me get the things done I need to do as a newly single woman. Or you might go, gosh, my marriage is over. I'm single again. I feel quite battered around by this change. Or, finally, I'm free. I am going to connect and build and work with my Persephone archetype, the maiden, to give me a bit of that lightness of being, to just enjoy this new beginning for me as a woman out in the world. What would be another one? Demeter, the mother. Let's say you have a strong Demeter archetype and you've been mothering and the kids have all left the home. They've all flown the nest. They've gone off traveling or university or whatever it is they're doing. And you're thinking, oh, heck, what comes next? Maybe Demeter could team up with Artemis to get that Artemis archetype part of us being able to say, I'm going to do some things for myself now. I have spent years looking after everyone else. Now it's my turn to look after me. That could be neat. Or you've been caring for years for your parents who are aging and have maybe passed away now. And that is tough work on every part of you, on mind, body, and soul. So maybe there comes a time of then saying, right, now Artemis is going to help me put some boundaries around so I can just care for myself for a while. And I'm going to spoil myself. So, hey, Aphrodite, come on in. Let's get looking at the things that delight and inspire me and move me and those sorts of things. I think that as women in midlife, working and familiarizing, firstly, ourselves with these goddess archetypes is fantastic. And then playing with them, getting to know them within you. How are they showing up? Who's taking the lead? And where can they help you get to where you want to go in life? I hope that you've enjoyed this talk about goddess archetypes. They are so, so useful. So I really do encourage you to play with them and use them as your pack of empowerment sisters. If you're interested in the soul medicine course that this comes from, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast episode, I am in the process of augmenting it with information around some of the endocrine stuff that happens as we go through menopause and how to find ways to help manage some of that. What I recommend is you head over to my website, georginalangdale.com, and join my mailing list, because I will be letting my subscribers know when that course is becoming available again. And if you're listening to this and you're a woman in midlife or beyond, or you're going through the menopause transition, or you're out the other side, I make a range of products called the Nat Femme Botanics Collection, which is designed specifically to help and support women's body, beauty and mind in midlife and beyond. And I make products there for all sorts of things that we kind of have to deal with at this time of life. And you might want to check out things like my Nat Femme Super Soothing Balm for everyday comfort and those special moments. Okay, ad break over, and I really am so delighted that you could join me this week in the Soul Garden. My name is Georgina Langdale, and I really look forward to talking to you again next week. You can find links to my websites in the show notes below, and I'll also put down the name of the author in the book that I mentioned in this talk. Take care, embrace the goddesses within, and see you next week. Bye.